Ever feel like you're kind of stuck, like spinning your wheels, going nowhere, and everyone else seems to be the problem?
Yeah.
Well, buckle up, because today we're diving into something that just might flip the script on how you see things. We're tackling self-deception.
Ooh, juicy.
Right, and trust me, this isn't some surface-level self-help stuff. This goes deep.
Well, it would go deep, all right. Self-deception is something we all do. Whether we realize it or not, it's kind of a human thing, you know?
Absolutely. And to guide us through this, we're using the book Leadership and Self-Deception. Think of it as our roadmap to understanding those sneaky blind spots, the ones that trip us up at work, in relationships, you name it.
Yeah, those blind spots. The book jumps right in, showing how easily we distort things, how we're masters at justifying our own actions.
Oh, tell me about it.
But then, here's the kicker. We turn around and are so quick to point the finger at others for situations we're contributing to.
Okay, so paint a picture for me. What does this self-deception thing look like in real life?
All right, picture this. You got a manager who's constantly on their team's case about productivity. They just can't get it together, they claim. But, and here's where the self-deception kicks in, what if the real issue is actually the manager's leadership style?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. It's that whole can't see the forest for the trees situation.
Exactly. They're so zeroed in on everyone else's flaws that they completely miss how their own actions are fueling the fire.
You know, when you first said self-deception, I'll be honest, I almost dismissed it as some abstract concept. But now you've got me thinking, wait a minute, am I falling into that trap? It's easier than we think, right?
Way easier. And the book really drives home how this impacts our ability to lead effectively. Like, take that manager we were talking about. Imagine if they shoot down every single idea their team has because they're convinced they already have all the answers.
Ouch. I've definitely worked with a few people like that. Talk about a creativity killer.
Kills it. And it doesn't stop there. It erodes trust, makes collaboration feel impossible. People stop feeling valued. And that directly impacts, well, everything. The book uses this example to show how self-deception isn't just an individual thing. It ripples outwards, affecting the whole team dynamic.
It makes you realize that self-deception isn't just some quirky thing. It has serious consequences, especially for anyone in a leadership role. So how do we break free?
Well, the book introduces this really powerful metaphor.
The box.
Box. Okay, now I'm really curious. So think of the box as that limited perspective that self-deception traps us in. We're so focused on our own stories, our own justifications, that we're basically boxed in. To escape, we got to shift our perspective. Instead of seeing others as obstacles, we need to start seeing them as individuals. Individuals with their own needs, their own motivations, their own perspectives, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, that's a huge shift. It's like going from me versus them to we're all in this together. But how do you actually make that happen?
Okay, so the book gives a great example. Let's say you're a manager and you've got an employee who's underperforming. Initially, you might assume they're just lazy or incompetent. Classic box thinking, right?
Right. They're jumping to conclusions based on their own limited viewpoint.
Exactly. But here's where the shift happens. This manager decides to try something different. They make a conscious effort to understand the challenges the employee might be facing. Maybe there are personal issues going on, or maybe they haven't received the right training. Suddenly, the whole situation looks different.
It's about going beyond the surface, trying to understand the why behind someone's actions.
Exactly. And that shift, as the book argues, is key for building stronger relationships and better collaboration. It's about recognizing that everyone has a story. These stories shape how they see the world, how they act, everything. And sometimes, listening to those stories can help us break free from our own self-deception.
That's powerful. It's about choosing empathy and understanding over judgment and blame.
100%. And that takes us to another crucial point. If breaking free from this box of self-deception is key to better leadership, what does true leadership actually look like, according to the book?
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's talk about what it really means to be a good leader.
This is where Chapter 4 gets really interesting, the big takeaway. True leadership isn't about control or always being right. It's about empowerment. The book tells this story about a leader who consistently underestimated their team. They were micromanaging, second-guessing decisions, basically holding everyone back.
Yikes, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was, but then something changed. The leader made a conscious effort to see their team members not as subordinates, but as partners. They started acknowledging their skills, their expertise, their potential. And you know what happened? There was a huge shift in team performance.
Wow, talk about a leadership light bulb moment, right? It's amazing how Just shifting your perspective can unlock a team's potential like that.
It really is. And it all comes back to that idea of empowerment. When we let go of needing to control everything, we create space for others to really step up and shine.
So it's not about shrinking yourself as a leader. It's about recognizing and lifting up the strengths of those around you.
Exactly. And you know what? That actually reminds me of a really fascinating part of the book. It doesn't just stick to Western leadership principles. It actually brings in perspectives from a totally different cultural lens.
Oh, interesting. It's like getting a fresh pair of eyes on this whole self-deception thing. What cultural lens are we talking about?
The book actually dives into Arabic literature and thought. It looks at how self-deception is viewed and dealt with in that cultural context.
That's a perspective you don't hear every day, especially in conversations about leadership and personal growth. What kind of insights did the book pull from Arabic thought on self-deception?
Well, one thing it highlights is this concept that translates roughly to like the blinded eye or the veiled heart. And it emphasizes this idea that self-deception isn't just about like intellectual dishonesty, but it's deeply rooted in our emotions, in how we connect with ourselves and others.
It's like we can build these walls, not just in our minds, but also in our hearts, that keep us from seeing the bigger picture, from really connecting authentically.
Exactly. And it's so interesting how this idea ties back into that box metaphor we were talking about earlier. The book talks about how Arabic philosophy and literature, they've recognized the dangers of this veiled heart for a long time, stressing the importance of looking inward and building self-awareness as ways to break down those internal barriers.
So it's not enough to just recognize the external behaviors, but to dig deeper and understand the internal stuff that fuels self-deception. We have to look inward as much as we look outward.
Exactly. And bringing in this different cultural lens, it adds a whole new layer of richness and depth to how we understand self-deception.
Right.
It highlights how this is a universal human struggle, but different cultures have different ways of approaching it and understanding it.
It's a good reminder that there are always multiple perspectives to consider, and those diverse viewpoints can really enrich our understanding of even these complex human experiences.
Absolutely. The book encourages us to really embrace this diversity of thought, to learn from different traditions, and to keep challenging our own assumptions about self-deception and its impact on us.
So it's not just about reading the book and moving on. It's about really sitting with these ideas, seeking out those different perspectives, and finding ways to integrate them into our own lives. It's a journey of continuous learning and growth.
Exactly, and that's what's so fascinating about this topic. Self-deception has all these layers, and the more we explore, the more we discover about ourselves and the world.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, but this onion leads to self-awareness. But seriously, I'm struck by how well the book brings together these different perspectives, from Western leadership to insights from Arabic thought. It really drives home the universality of self-deception.
It does, and it all comes back to that core message. Self-deception is something we all deal with, no matter our background, culture, or what we do for a living. It's a universal human experience that can either hold us back or, when we confront it, become this catalyst for serious personal and professional growth.
It's like that saying, the truth will set you free, but first we have to be willing to face it, even if it's uncomfortable or challenges what we thought we knew.
Absolutely. And that willingness to confront our own self-deception, to look past our own limited perspectives, that's what unlocks our potential.
It's about stepping outside our comfort zones, challenging our own assumptions, being open to seeing the world and ourselves in new ways. It's about embracing that journey of constantly learning and growing. But that brings up a big question. If self-deception is so common, so ingrained in us, how do we even start to recognize it in ourselves? What are some signs that we might be caught in its web?
That's where the book gets really practical. It lays out a roadmap for recognizing those sneaky, often unconscious ways that self-deception shows up in our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
So it's like a guidebook to navigating the tricky terrain of our own minds.
Exactly. And the first step, according to the book, is to pay attention to our emotions.
That makes sense. Our emotions are like these signals, right? They point us toward areas where we might need to, do some digging.
Exactly. And the book says if we're constantly feeling defensive or blamed or like we need to justify ourselves, it might be a sign that self-deception is at play.
It's like that feeling of always needing to be right, even when the evidence says otherwise, or always blaming outside factors for our own shortcomings.
Exactly. And the book cautions against just brushing off these emotions. Instead, it encourages us to see them as valuable clues, as invitations to examine situations more objectively.
So it's about hitting pause and asking ourselves, what role might I be playing in this? Am I seeing things clearly, or am I letting my own biases and justifications cloud my judgment?
Yes, it's about cultivating this inner observer, this non-judgmental awareness of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And that leads to another big sign of self-deception: resisting feedback.
Ugh, feedback. That can be tough to swallow, even when it's coming from a good place. But how does being resistant to feedback connect to self-deception?
Well, the book says that when we're stuck in self-deception, we surround ourselves with yes people who back up our existing beliefs and avoid challenging our perspectives.
We create these echo chambers where our own biases and justifications just get amplified.
Exactly. And that makes us super resistant to any feedback that goes against those carefully constructed narratives we've built. We might get defensive, dismissive, or even hostile towards anyone who dares to question our views.
It's like that saying, it's hard to hear the truth when your ears are plugged with your own ego.
Right. And the book says this resistance to feedback is often a dead giveaway of self-deception. It shows we're more interested in protecting our egos than seeking truth and growing.
So it's about being open to constructive criticism, even when it stings a bit. It's about recognizing that feedback, even when it's tough to hear, can be a really powerful tool for growth, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. And, this ties back into the idea of humility, which the book highlights as a key antidote to self-deception.
Makes sense. Humility allows us to say, hey, I don't have all the answers, or I'm still learning, and to recognize that other people's perspectives matter.
Exactly. And this humility allows us to receive feedback, learn from mistakes, and become more effective leaders, partners, better humans, really.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about being open to growth, to learning, to constantly becoming better versions of ourselves.
100%. And that brings us to another really important point: the power of seeking out diverse perspectives.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Surrounding ourselves with people who think differently can challenge those assumptions we have and help us see things from new angles.
Exactly. The book stresses that when we only listen to people who agree with us, when we're stuck in those echo chambers, we become much more susceptible to self-deception.
It's like that saying, if everyone around you agrees with you, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly. The book encourages us to actively look for those different viewpoints, to have respectful conversations with people who see things differently, and to be open to having our own beliefs challenged.
So it's about embracing this intellectual humility, recognizing that our own experiences and perspectives, while they're valid, are just one small piece of a much larger puzzle.
Exactly. And that willingness to step outside our comfort zones, to engage with different cultures, ideas, experiences, that's key to breaking free from self-deception.
It's about recognizing that diversity in all its forms isn't just a nice to have, it's essential for personal and collective growth.
100%. And, this brings us back to the transformative power of self-awareness. The book really emphasizes that recognizing and dealing with our own self-deception is a journey, not a destination.
So it's not like we read the book, have this big aha moment, and bam, we're cured of self-deception forever.
Not quite. The book reminds us that self-deception is deeply ingrained in us, and it takes constant vigilance and self-reflection to keep it in check.
So it's like a muscle we got to keep working out. The more we practice self-awareness, the better we become at spotting and addressing our own biases.
Exactly. And the book offers a bunch of tools and techniques for building that self-awareness, like journaling, meditation, even just asking for feedback from people we trust.
So it's about making time for introspection, for reflection, for honest self-assessment.
Exactly. And the more we do that, the better we become at recognizing those subtle whispers of self-deception, those moments when our egos might be trying to lead us astray.
It's about developing that inner compass that guides us toward being more authentic, more true to ourselves, more effective in all areas of our lives.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this whole topic so empowering. Yeah, self-deception is a universal human thing, but we're not powerless against it. We have the power to recognize it, understand its impact, and ultimately break free from its grip.
It's about taking back our power and choosing to live and lead with more authenticity, integrity, and intention.
Exactly. And that journey starts with being willing to look in the mirror and ask ourselves some tough questions.
It's about embracing those uncomfortable truths, those areas where we might be falling short, and using those insights to grow. It's about choosing to show up as our best selves, even when it's hard.
And that's what makes this conversation so timely and relevant. In a world filled with distractions and external pressures, it's easy to lose sight of what's going on inside us.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle, to chase external validation instead of internal integrity, to let our egos call the shots.
Exactly. And that's why it's more important now than ever to make self-awareness a priority, to cultivate that inner stillness and to really examine our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
It's about creating that space for introspection, for reflection, for honest self-assessment.
Exactly. And when we do that, we not only unlock our own potential, but we also inspire those around us to do the same.
It's about creating a ripple effect of authenticity, integrity, and growth.
Absolutely. That's a legacy worth striving for.
It's like we're finally hitting the pause button, taking a breath, tuning into that inner voice that's often drowned out by all the noise of everyday life.
Exactly. And when we create that space for reflection, that's when we can start to see those patterns of self-deception that might be holding us back.
It's like shining a spotlight on those hidden corners of our minds, the ones we might want to avoid. Those "I'm always right" or "it's everyone else's fault" stories we tell ourselves.
And when we do that, when we face those things head on, that's when real change can happen, both personally and professionally.
It's about stepping out of self-deception's shadow and into the light of self-awareness. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key things you hope listeners will take away from this conversation?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, that's for sure. We dug deep into this whole idea of self-deception, how it shows up in our lives, the impact it can have, and most importantly, how to break free.
We talked about that box that can limit our perspective, how important empathy and understanding are for getting out of that box, and how embracing different viewpoints can be so transformative.
Right. And we can't forget about humility, self-awareness, being willing to question our own assumptions. All of that's crucial as we navigate leadership, relationships, personal growth, you name it.
Oh, and those insights from Arabic thought were fascinating. They really highlighted just how universal this whole human experience is, and all the different ways cultures have dealt with self-deception throughout history.
It's a good reminder that we're all in this together. We all face similar challenges, and we're all looking for ways to grow.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. It's had those aha moments, those thought-provoking insights, and even some practical tools for building self-awareness and authenticity. So, as we finish up, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they continue on their own journeys?
As we wrap up this exploration, I'm filled with this sense of hope and possibility. Yes, self-deception is a part of being human, but it doesn't have to control us. We have the power to choose awareness over ignorance, empathy over judgment, authenticity over self-deception. It's a choice we make every single day, in every interaction, every decision.
So as you go about your day, I encourage you to pay attention to those moments when self-deception might be creeping in. Notice your emotional responses, whether you're resisting feedback, how willing you are to consider different points of view. And remember, recognizing self-deception isn't about beating yourself up. It's about self-compassion. It's about acknowledging that we're human, we're imperfect, and we're capable of growth.
Beautifully said. It's about embracing the journey of becoming more aware, more authentic, more true to ourselves.
And that journey, my friends, is the greatest adventure of all.
It really is.
So keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep striving to show up as your best selves, even when it's hard. The world needs your authenticity.
Because the truth, as they say, will set you free.
And on that note, that wraps up our deep dive into self-deception. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit life-changing. Until next time, keep those minds open and those hearts curious.